What's going on, and welcome back. We've got 4 brand new Pool 3 cards. What are the best decks to use them in now that you have full access to these powerful cards? Battle mode is here, and we have got our hands testing out what cards work, what don't, and there are definitely some that you need to include in your decks. And lastly, February Season Pass is here, and it is discard season. We're going to break down the new card that you can expect next week. All of that and more on today's episode of the Snapchat. And again, I am joined today by Mr. Alex. And Alex, my gosh, the biggest update to ever hit Marvel Snap. Battle mode, pool series drops, the works, man. What do you think? How you doing?
I'm doing great, and you're right. This has been an absolutely momentous week in Marvel Snap. Battle mode coming out has opened up an entire new landscape for Marvel Snap. Competitive is in full swing. We have just straight up friendly battles. You can actually just play your friends, right? And it's couldn't be more an exciting time to be a Marvel Snap player.
It blew me away. It actually blew my expectations away. I thought it was cool on paper when we saw it in the video, but actually doing it and testing and playing against my own community and against streamers, it's really well done. It's so nerve-wracking, and it's completely different than regular ladder.
Yeah, it's completely different. And I think that that's really neat because it provides you with like unique strategies and like different cards are going to be more beneficial. I think it's an amazing mode. And one thing I'm looking forward to as well is being able to play against you at some point because, I want to play against the king. That's what I want to do.
It's funny. I've seen, I've played against a couple other creators, and I have seen a lot of people like, we need the Alex versus Cozy infamous matchup. But Alex, we got some good subjects today. We already covered what we're going to be talking about on this side of things. And what are the 3 subjects on your side?
We're going to be talking about how Wolverine got buffed, and we're going to be talking about a few decks that you can try with Wolverine. I couldn't be more excited to be able to get Wolverine into my decks, and I'm sure you guys are feeling the same way. We're also talking about the nerfs that happened. Leader got absolutely destroyed, and perhaps maybe Zabu and Surfer are next. And then we're going to talk about setting Marvel Snap goals. Now, this is something that I think is near to dear to my heart. I think that it's really important that we set goals for ourselves so we can engage with the game in a healthy way.
Absolutely, buddy. And it's so funny because we've talked about on the last couple of weeks, we've talked about Wolverine and we've talked about buffs and nerfs. And on the most recent buff and nerf predictions, I left out Wolverine. You want to know why? I thought he was done. I thought he was set in the ways of how he was going to stay in the game. And I couldn't be happy. I'm excited to break that down on your side, bud.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, my friend, let's go ahead and talk about probably the most exciting thing for most players. We have 4 brand new Pool 3 cards: She-Hulk, Titania, Absorbing Man, and Luke Cage. And this opens up a ton of different play styles. And these cards are legit. They're some of the best that were in the Pool 4 on the last patch. And just the beginning of Pool Series drops is absolutely huge, Alex. And we've got to start with our girl, She-Hulk. Now, it's funny. For decks, Alex, as you know, she can kind of be used all over, right? She's not really a one type of deck card, which is awesome. But by far, guys, if you haven't used this style of deck, we're going to bring up the first deck today, and it is a Devil Dinosaur Sunspot Infinite deck. Now, you don't have to use the Devil Dinosaur component, Alex, because Infinite, Sunspot get the job done alone. In fact, those 3 cards, maybe Moon Girl, that's kind of all you need for the shell.
Yeah, and I mean, anytime you have a deck with Devil Dinosaur, you know I'm in. I'm in. But I think the thing that you really brought up that I think really knocks out like just how good She-Hulk is the fact that She-Hulk can be a near plug-in in almost every archetype. It really is a truly remarkable card, and naturally you have a ton of synergy with Sunspot as well. And if you have magic, there's like some craziness you can do on turn 7 where like you have like the magic She-Hulk Infinite combo with it's like total anarchy, right? So like that was tested early on in the She-Hulk days. I think it's a little too greedy, but She-Hulk really can go anywhere.
But here's the thing, She-Hulk has been in the game for a while now, and people just oftentimes forget that she's in a lot of decks, right? So Infinite is kind of what they're waiting for, and that's really highlighted in this deck here, full of big power cards, and you really only have Wave and She-Hulk as far as your Pool 3 options, which Wave can be replaced. And this deck is highly customizable. Overall, the deck just has insane amounts of win conditions, with Devil Dinosaur and Moon Girl having synergy with just about every card in the deck. Again, you can cheat out cards early with Jubilee and Wave, and then you've got Cable and Agent 13 to give you variety and keep your opponent on their toes. I also like to throw in Magic for Wave if you want to go for that double She-Hulk play for the 40 bomb. But then I also have my post-credits deck, and I've used this one a lot climbing myself. It has a bit more of heavy cards in it, but Nakia's here to go ahead and boost up things like your She-Hulk that you can clone. And then you've got a flying Captain Marvel if you'd like to use that as well. And both versions of the decks are extremely successful. And best of all, she's extremely plug and playable. But either one you choose or whatever you create absolutely thumps, Alex.
Yeah, and the reason why it thumps too is because that's 40 power where you can choose like where it goes, right? Like it's 20 power here, 10 power there, 10 power here, 40 power in one lane if you want. Like it doesn't matter, right? Like you have that optionality. It's truly remarkable. And like that's why like lately, even with like Darkhawk and stuff, when I see Moon Girl, I immediately start sweating. Because like it's like everyone has access to the She-Hulk now. So I'm like, when I see Moon Girl, I'm like, no, I don't like this. If he snaps, I'm gone.
Moon Girl has become so much more dangerous. Yeah, you see it because it's like double death. Could it be double Spider-Man? There's so many things that can happen from it. Let's go to move on to the next card, Alex, and other decks you can play. And I want to move to Luke Cage. I think this is kind of the unsung hero. And I'm telling you, every week I'm playing more Luke Cage. Now, I got Shadow King. Don't recommend it, guys. He's not that great of a card. He's decent at best. But even Shadow King with Luke Cage is an insane combo. But he helps with your location RNG, and he's that kind of plug-and-play option. He does require some help, though, from other Pool 3 cards. So he's way less helpful than She-Hulk at the beginning of Pool 3. But Alex, what do you think of Luke Cage?
I love Luke Cage. However, I do think he feels weak as a 2-1. I'd been experimenting a lot with like a Wong-going Spectrum list where I was actually running Luke Cage, which is an amazing counter to all these popular Scorpions, by the way, because the effect is retroactive. So when you play a card that's been Scorpion, it just pops back up. It's just like, no, I don't care. Yep. Luke Cage is on the board. And with Spectrum Wong, you theoretically add 2 or 4 additional power, so it becomes a 2-3 or a 2-5. So like in those types of lists, because then if you're running like a ongoing type list, you can run Typhoid Mary in that ongoing list, which also gets hit by Spectrum. I've been experimenting with that. It was pretty good, but it was a little clunkier because like some of the really high-end meta decks right now, I think they're so tightly wound that like any clunky decks kind of feel like they don't compete with the Silver Surfer. They don't compete with Zabu because those playstyles are so clean, and I think they're just a little too OP right now. So like in 2 weeks from now, maybe hint, perhaps a Wong going list with Luke Cage is going to be very like usable.
Yeah, you know what? That's a great point. I know we're talking about this on your side, but in general, I just think that these 2 cards are making just all decks that aren't exactly every precise move planned out super functional. You can definitely win with the decks, but it's a lot harder the higher you climb. And Disruption, for that matter, is one of those kind of decks. And so definitely as things get adjusted in the next couple of weeks, it should open up more fun, unique play. But there are some fun Disrupt decks out there.
We have to talk about Toxic Rain again? Like, we got to bring it up? Like,
oh, I was bringing up Toxic Rain. Yeah, we had to bring up a little Toxic Rain. Like, what I would say before we get to Toxic Rain is if you get Luke Cage early, Lizard is the definite combo card you got to pair with him. Having a 2-5 is amazing. Now,
and another ongoing, by the way.
Exactly. Now, learning to play Luke Cage, I will say this, and people might disagree with this. I don't play him on turn 2. I actually save my Luke Cage usually for after I snap, because especially if it's location heavy. Like if you have negative zone, don't play him on turn 2. They know you've got that advantage. See if you're going to kind of have the cards to win the rest of the battle, and then you throw in Luke Cage, and you immediately have up to a plus 12 advantage on that lane. And so, that is kind of where I play Luke Cage. He's also a little bit like Patriot. If you play Misty Knight, they know what you're going to do. And so Luke Cage does kind of scream what you're trying to do. Early Typhoid pulls the same way. But if you do have more of a complete Pool 3 collection, then of course we got to talk about Toxic Rain. And yes, it is Pool 3 heavy, but this is just the deck to play if you enjoy being completely toxic in Marvel Snap. Now, it does have Absorbing Man. It has She-Hulk. I tried to throw a bunch of the new drops in here. You can certainly exchange these for other cards. But you've got Magic in here to synergize with Moon Girl and She-Hulk. But at the same time, she's there to help you get the combos you need. And that's mainly going to be Hazmat, Gambit, and you can throw that all on Wong. And then Absorbing Man or Odin to have even more chaos. Delete their board, rain down negative points. You can kind of do it all with this. And then Debris Rocks are the perfect thing to use as a Hazmat bomb. It's a fun deck, but it's not necessarily a consistent meta rank climber. But it's by far, if you're just wanting to let off some steam and have some fun, I love Disrupt.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this deck list is really cool. Like ultimately, like Luke Cage stays dry while others feel the pain, and that's exactly what you want here. And ultimately, like, I think that once you start to see some of these overtuned cards kind of get brought down ever so slightly, the landscape for kind of more diverse deck design is going to open up. And a deck like this and genuine disruption might start climbing faster than you might think.
Luke Cage is kind of a plug and play, but works really great with the disrupt decks. And Alex, I'm excited to see kind of what other cards will come out to aid Luke Cage.
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of like what we talk about all the time, how some cards, they have very interesting design landscapes where future iterations and future cards that come out will definitely impact their viability. I mean, we talked about Black Bolt, last week, the week prior, and, immediately after the podcast, I was getting tweets about how there is a card coming out that's going to benefit Black Bolt, right? So we got to keep everything kind of in frame of like, well, Second Dinner kind of knows what they're doing, and I'm sure they have a plan for some of these cards. But I would like to see, like, I was surprised that Hazmat got changed to 2/2 and Luke Cage didn't. But then again, if Luke Cage gets buffed, like, what do you do with like someone like Colossus? You know what I mean? Like, does Colossus feel worthless now?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think Luke Cage, the battles that I lose with Luke Cage isn't really about that one power. I do understand that it's just lackluster. Like, the one power doesn't feel good. But like it's not near the trade-off of Rogue. But that negative trade-off is really big. Having no way to have negative on your side is insane. And that also works for cards that you use against your own cards, like I said, with Shadow King. But Alex, it's the battle of the cue balls, okay? And I would say that She-Hulk is the best card to get, but Absorbing Man is probably the most tempting card to get for Pool 3 players or those that don't have them yet. Absorbing Man is a fun card that works across all archetypes. And I'm going to let you kick us off with your favorite either combos or decks that you like with this card.
What I've been doing a lot with Absorbing Man is I've been playing a lot of discard with Absorbing Man, actually. And the reason for that is because Absorbing Man with Zabu just works amazingly with Hellcow. The Hellcow Absorbing Man combination basically wipes out your hand. Because the way Hellcow works, by the way, it doesn't discard 2 cards like at random. It discards 2 unique cards. So it's much better at kind of like emptying your hand, getting hits on your Apocalypse, setting up your Dracula, for instance. And Absorbing Man works immensely well with that because that's like a massive discard play. And so I've been playing a lot of Hellcow Absorbing Man with Zabu, and I've been finding it to be like absolutely incredible. Naturally, right, you have the absolutely toxic Spider-Man Absorbing Man combination, which, you know what, I've kind of grown to think, Cozy, that isn't as good as people think it is because you're going to win, but people just walk. And like you don't really maximize your cube gain.
Yeah, I haven't used that combo since probably the first week of Zabu, mainly because it's the same argument of why I don't put Spider-Man in my Galactus decks. You're just accepting that you're only going to get 2 cubes unless you've got a cocky opponent and they happen to snap early. I agree. I'm not big on it. It's okay. It's nice, but it's if you have the time, you can 2 cube climb to your heart's delight. But I do try to go for the max min myself. But definitely Spider-Man's insane. Any other combos that you like?
Double Shang-Chi. Like Shang-Chi and then Absorbing Man, Shang-Chi on the other side. They're like, what just happened? I put all this effort and all this tokens and money into Shiri Red Skull, and you just punched it all out into oblivion. That's a combo that I've used more than once, which absolutely surprised me.
Yeah, I would say if you have Zabu, you definitely, honestly, Zabu or Surfer, you are going to benefit a bit more from Absorbing Man because A, the 4-cost card, and that's where I use them too. Enchantress and Shang-Chi, just doubling those effects sometimes can be brutal, man. I was doing with Shadow King too, which was kind of interesting to test him out. But then on the Surfer side, right, you're like, okay, my opponent might expect 1 Silver Surfer to come out with this deck, but then Absorbing Man gives you another go-around, which is kind of crazy. And then the 3-cost cards all have good on-reveal effects, right? So things like Juggernaut, you can do twice. Obviously not Maximus, but Brood. Another insane option to have play Brood on 3 and Absorbing Man on 4 if you don't have any other things to play. Just all of these are going to work pretty well for you. Sarah Surfer doesn't need Absorbing Man, unlike some other decks that we're about to talk about. And I do want to say, don't get too crazy with some combos. Not everything is going to work. Now, things just don't try, guys. Don't try to do things like Absorbing Man to Mystique. Mystique's already has that ongoing ability, so he's going to copy the card, just like Alex said. So there's some interactions that are a bit wonky, and you kind of do them once and you learn, like, not to do it again. But probably for Absorbing Man, one thing I wanted to tell you guys is if you like using a bunch of different archetypes, he's probably the card for you because where I use him probably the most is to enable more options for those archetypes. Alex, you brought up discard, right? How about destroy? How about move? You can finally copy Doctor Strange. You can copy cards like Venom. You can copy any on reveal for that archetype. And usually that's to power up more cards in that archetype.
Yeah, he's like the ultimate flex spot, really, right? Like he can do anything. He can do anything. Like he's a card that like is probably a little too strong because Zabu's a little too strong too. Like if he was just a straight up 4 cost, you're talking about like often using him as a 2 cost, by the way. And whenever you discount like the cost of a card and have its effect for half the price, then of course the card's going to feel absolutely wild the entire time. That's the Zabu effect. And I mean, we'll have to talk later on about whether or not that sticks around.
Yeah, and so here's the thing too. The other thing I like about him, and you wouldn't think to do this, obviously, like following up Arrow, some of those stronger on reveal cards are the best places to use them. For ramp decks, Alex, right? You're like me, I think. I don't use 4-cost cards in my ramp deck, right? You go 5 and 6 always, right? But some of these abilities are pretty damn strong, right? And so if you can play something like a powerful 5, you can have up to 3 arrows technically, because you could play Arrow, Absorbing Man, and then Odin on top of that. And so Absorbing Man in ramp decks is better than you think as well. You could play double Doctor Dooms without having Odin for cheaper. I mean, there's some areas that you can use them in ramp decks as well. And probably the most cheeky thing I've done is, in fact, you can use Absorbing Man to copy Galactus if you miss on your wave Galactus, which is insanity. Do you have Titania yet?
I do, actually. I was very fortunate to pull Titania. But Cozy, I know there's obviously good ways to play Titania. There is the, the Green Goblin combination where you play Green Goblin, kick over the Titania, kick over the Green Goblin, fill their location, and then like now you can play and pull her back and they can't do anything. And like I think it's a card that perhaps we're sleeping on because it's too like mentally it's just too mentally taxing to play.
But and most of the time, even though it's like, oh, this has the biggest brain card ability, those are just, they end up just being too hard to play, which is, it does seem to be true most of the time. I feel like I want to make a full in-depth guide just about like when to play on what turns with her. But she's still a 1/5. So following it up with 0 is still 3 cost total and 8 power, which is just, that's Maximus value and a little bit better. And then at the same time, you can also go ahead and plug her into Zulus, which I like a lot. And you can just use her, like you said, kind of as a fill option, which I enjoy. Titania is, in my opinion, a good card on paper. One that I do like to use every so often. But I don't end up putting her in a ton of my decks. Like, she's not my 1-cost slot, per se, Alex. And I think that's more of a Sunspot problem than anything else. I think Sunspot is at such a good place that it's tough to ever use any other card. But if you do have Titania, like, you can plug her into pretty much any deck. I mean, she's a pretty plug-and-playable card for the most part. But I do like her in Zoo decks. I mean, 5 power is 5 power. And then you have a lot of little interactions here, like 0. And then, of course, you can go ahead and boost that up with Khazar. And then, like, worst case scenario, I guess Dracula still can get 5 here. I do prefer the other 1 cost, and it's a pretty competitive cost. But Titania does have value a good chunk of the time. And for the audio listeners, this is a standard new Zoo deck. So it's a bunch of 1-cost cards. We have Ant-Man, Squirrel Girl, Sunspot, Iceman, 0. You've got cards like Armor and Lizard to help with priority, and then Khazar. And then Red Skull is the pull 3 card to pull with Dracula and Infinite. It works out pretty well. But I would say if you don't like to think that much while you play, I wouldn't play her. Or like if you don't love Ebony Maw and the things you have to work around for him, she kind of falls somewhat in the same boat.
When I'm ramping, I play Ebony Maw. Like, I would rather have Ebony Maw out there. At least I know, like, obviously I can't play into that location. I got the risk of not pulling it by turn 3. But it's a very consistent card that I'm like, that's 7 power. I can't play there, but I'm playing playing Doctor Doom with Odin. And, like, I have ways to access that location. Whereas Titania feels like it's so easy to screw it up.
Well, the thing, too, though, is she's a great turn 6 play, right? So if she's your last card you play, it's still that 5 power on top. But yes, correct. She is easy to screw up, and I think that's the worst. I feel like I was playing her, and then I lost 8 cubes because of her. And I was like, all right, I'm hanging up my hat. It's not worth the risk right now.
Yeah, it's like when you lose with Titania, it's like, well, that was a skill problem.
Yep. Yeah,
like,
right. That's all on me.
It's a very high skill cap card.
100%, 100%. Makes Cerebro look like a damn fool. Let's go and get to our next subject, though. Those are going to be the decks that are probably the strongest. Zoo decks with Titania, She-Hulk, and Infinite style of decks. Also, Bayro, or having that 2 bays in there with She-Hulk. Destroy is back, and so definitely She-Hulk in that wave combo is super strong. And then, of course, the Toxic deck with Luke Cage, having him as a plug-and-play option in general. And then Absorbing Man fits more than one, but I agree, Alex. I do like him as a discard option. Or in just general Zabu decks if you happen to have him unlocked. All right, Alex, we're going to go to our next subject, battle mode. It's been out for a full whopping 24 hours at the time of recording this video, and I've done quite a good amount of battles myself, and the cards that I thought would be good in there are great, but I've also found some other ones that are just no-brainer decisions. Hit me with a card right off the bat for the viewers and listeners that you think is just insane for the new mode.
Honestly, any card that gives you the ability to shut down a complete archetype, like Cosmo. Like, if you have Cosmo in your hand and they're playing a Hella deck, they just may able to just concede right away. Like, there's no, they just can't win. Like, oh, I have Invisible Woman, Cosmo. It's like every time. Like, Cosmo's one of those cards that, like, when you start to identify what deck they have, what play patterns they have, what cards they have, then it's like Cosmo's the ultimate counter. Like, it's just so disruptive. Like, in a regular game of Marvel Snap, Cosmo can be game breaking. But like, you don't really know your opponent that much, and you don't really know what deck they're playing. But if you're facing the same person over and over and over again, this card could single-handedly shatter them.
Yes, and I love that you started with Cosmo, because I want to work through kind of 4 different types of cards that I want to talk about that I think excel the most and that have definitely, I think, stood out more than any other cards on the list. So you brought up Cosmo first. I think counter cards are the most important cards to have in your deck, because if you don't have them and your opponent does, you lose, just like Alex said, right? Like, it's just going to be so hard to work around those cards. Cosmo obviously being the great example. And probably being the near top there. Now, Shang-Chi's good too, but you can kind of work around it unless you just have a pure power deck. But having counters, I realize, is just extremely viable in battle mode. But Alex, the other kind of type of cards that I think are awesome are card producers. Now, battle mode is a mind game. The most mind games I've ever played, because you already know what the opponent is playing, right? And even something like Daily Bugle completely has you in your head. You're like, what card did they get? I know what they have. How can they use that against me? I've got this. I lost to Moltz because I was playing a Vision. He had my Vision and beat me with my own damn Vision. He betrayed me. It was terrible. And so, like, that card producers, things like Agent Coulson, things like even Agent 13, man, able to get cards that your opponent doesn't know what you have.
That's actually awesome. Like, the idea of playing a deck where like your opponent can never truly know what you're holding in your hand, I think is ingenious. And of course, like, Maria Hill might have additional power. I think Agent Coulson's low-key awesome, by the way. And you're starting to see more Agent Coulson, eh? Like, people are really warming up to him.
Finally,
like, I'm seeing him on the ladder a lot, actually.
Yeah, as more people unlock him. I was kind of sad he didn't dip down to the pool 3 status, right? Because he's still going to kind of be hidden in there in general. But yeah, because he's producing 4 and 5 cost, the most impactful type of cards, to always have a new 5 cost almost every round and put 4 value on the board is insane. He's a really good card. I've talked about him when I had Molt on the Snapchat here as the one I thought would do well, and he is translating to that exactly. So card producers are great, and we'll talk about more of those. And we knew that those would do pretty well. As far as counters, though, not just your Shang-Chi, Scarlet Witch and Storm are proving to be even more important as well. And hell, Luke Cage, we just talked about. Location helpers is huge, man, because I lost a couple just pure location luck, man. Did you find that being the case?
Yes, and actually in my recent Decks of the Week video, I spoke about how you're seeing Scarlet Witch reemerge.
Yeah.
A lot of players at high MMR, high brackets are really starting to utilize Scarlet Witch. It's 2/3 power, which is absolutely respectful, but the ability to like rapidly change a location that might be favoring your opponent, right? Like if they're zooming into Xandar or something like that, you change it, it turns into whatever. The chances are it's not going to be as beneficial as what they had originally, right? That's kind of the hope there. But yes, it can backfire. I've had it done before, right? But you're seeing it get slotted in much more frequently, which is awesome because, like, for a while, I felt like Scarlet Witch was invisible because of how good Storm was. So it's kind of nice to see her come back.
Absolutely. Scarlet Witch, the two biggest wins that I had that won me the battle mode. I was playing against Snapster, and I used I used a card I'll talk about, but Scarlet Witch, let's say, on Limbo, won 8 cubes. And then on Molt, I played it on Death's Domain as my last card, and won Death's Domain and won a 4 cube there. And so already Scarlet Witch is proven to be very helpful, extremely useful. And for me, which card has all of that, and the one that I've won the most with in battle mode right now, I knew it to be true, baby, Papa Thanos. Thanos is awesome in battle mode because of the Space Stone and because of the Reality Stone having that huge impact, kind of like Scarlet Witch. Huge location helper in general, and one that I've been using a lot. I know we don't have them. I know a lot of people don't have them, but if you do, definitely think about including them because it makes your opponent think what cards you might have and which ones you might not have. So on that note of Thanos, one of the reasons I like him, right, is he has move cards, or the Space Stone. Move cards big because, again, what are they? They're head thinkers, and all of my matches I played were all about what is he going to do? But it just heightens those cards because you have to play repetitive battles. And so I really enjoy the move cards. And then, Alex, to add to that, right? If we're talking about head-scratching cards, ones that make your opponent second-guess themselves, the two cards that I struggled with a ton in battle mode was Sunspot for one, and of course, right? Oh, it's Sunspot. Well, Sunspot you can add power to at any time, and I was always trying to guess if my opponent was going to add that power on turn 6, right? It's just elevated, and it gives you that advantage. So he's even better now in battle mode than he already was. But in the same of chord, cards that make you think, Thor, I cannot tell you, man, how many times I was like, is that hammer going to come out? Am I going to lose to that dang hammer? And I did a couple of times. In times that I did not think that they had the hammer, and I went all in there too. And I ended up retreating sometimes when I could have won with the hammer too. And so these cards that have your opponent on their toes, you want to look through the list in your collection. Is there any on your head that you know that kind of do the same aspect?
Yeah, for me, it's Heimdall.
Oh.
Like, listen, I'm telling you right now, and I don't want to reveal too much, but I'm telling you right now, an absolutely filthy combination is Electro and Heimdall, because you can Heimdall turn 5, you can Heimdall turn 6. And you know what the best thing about Heimdall is? Is that if you don't Heimdall, it's still having an effect because your opponent's like always having to account for Heimdall, and it is completely obnoxious. With
that, I'm glad you brought up Heimdall in general. I think ramp decks do extremely well because you do have the ability to play ramp, but also you can kind of mix and match. I thought Arnim Zola kind of fits that same mind game, right? You don't even have to use them, but the sheer power of having Arnim Zola in your deck puts the fear in the opponent because you can put down a strong 5-cost card, whatever that might be, right? Or Shuri on 4, big 5-cost, and then I don't know. Am I going to split this into 2 lanes? Am I going to, play something else? He's another head-scratching card that can be used over and over. And it doesn't mean you use him all the time, but he adds to that kind of pedigree. So Heimdall, I think Arnim Zola, move options, Thor, Sunspot, these all do really well. And to close on it, and besides Daredevil, he's insane too. Hybrid decks, Alex, I think we're seeing more hybrid decks do extremely well in battle mode.
Yeah, absolutely. Any deck that is able to kind of like put on multiple hats, play multiple roles, be flexible, be versatile, I think is going to be really good for battle mode.
Yep. And Daredevil, guys, turn 5, being able to see that in battle mode is crazy because you can now snap, and it's even worse in battle mode than rank, right? You're never going to see this person again in rank, but in battle mode, you're like, you bluff more. Honestly, you just bluff more in battle mode. There's just way more scare tactics in the mode in general, and Daredevil accomplishes that so well. I have not played Lockjaw, but I feel like a high casino Lockjaw deck might be okay because of your options, Alex. Have you played Lockjaw in battle mode?
I haven't had a chance to play Lockjaw in battle mode yet. However, I am seeing a lot more Lockjaw than usual, in particular with Thor, as you mentioned prior. Mm-hmm. It's kind of making a resurgence, obviously, because you can play the Mjolnir into the Lockjaw and get another free cycle while giving your Thor the buff. It's a really interesting list.
Yep. I think he has the ability because he kind of is a hybrid deck without being one, and that's why ramp as well. You can build it to be a ramp deck, and then you don't have to use ramp. And I do think Lockjaw could fit in that. But for now, I've been doing a lot of move, a lot of Mysterio, been enjoying that a ton, and just good value cards with counters. Let's repeat, counter cards are king in battle mode, Alex. That brings us to our last subject, Alex. We've got a new season upon us. This was the longest Marvel Snap season to date, and we've got the rise of discard. We've been saying this for a while. It's been hinted for a while. Modok is coming, and Modok is next season's crazy card. I don't know if it'll be near Zabu or Surfer potential, but my gosh, guys, Modok is going to be a 5/8 that discards your entire hand. It's crazy. It's the new Ant-Man movie is kind of the theme of the entire season pass. Right off the bat, Alex, the rise of Hela. Hela's back. I mean, that's the first thing I think of right away. What are your thoughts of Modok?
I think it's a really interesting card. The full extent, obviously, like there's possible helicarrier implications here. Like there's so many cards that could work with it, especially if you can cheat it out a little early. But obviously, Hela's a big winner here. Dracula Apocalypse is a big winner. It's a 5/8, so like it itself is a winner. Like it hits hard, right? The full extent of its power, though, like my initial reaction is it feels like it might be weaker or less. How do I say less meta impactful compared to Silver Surfer and Zabu?
Oh, yeah.
However, for discard itself, I think this is a huge tool to the arsenal. Like way more significant than Helicarrier was. Like we saw Helicarrier and we're like, oh, that's a cool tool for discard. And then like no one plays it except Snapster. And then now we have like a card that like brings discard into a whole new level, like a whole new kind of like play style, one could say. I'm really interested in giving it a shot, but it's hard to determine what its actual power level is.
Yeah, for me, if you look at, let's say we had Miles Morales that helped up move, and then we had Black Panther for on reveal. He is such a step above what he does for his archetype than those cards. But no, Zabu and Surfer, they hit all archetypes, and that's why they're always going to... I don't know if we'll ever see... I mean, those were insane as far as their power. So insane that we're going to talk about what might happen to them on your side of the channel. But Modok, first of all, 5/8, man, nothing to scoff at. That's incredible. Cosmos, they're back better than ever. And Cosmos almost mandatory at this point because of Surfer and all of the power of on reveal in this game. But you're right. Modok is going to add a ton to the discard archetype. And obviously, Hela is the one that you want to think because now you don't have to really do anything. You can just have that as your last crazy turn. That's it. You can just play that, and that's going to be your crazy wombo combo.
Invisible Woman into like Modok and then Hela.
And then you get 5/8. That's the thing, the 5/8 on top of it. So I think there's great. He might be good in Lockjaw. Him coming out early could be devastating. But then if you put the right cards, Alex, right? Let's go to the discards here. It's funny because we kind of lost a lot of these good discard options for other ones that you would plug in. But I love that Swarm is going to come back as an option. If he gets discarded early, no big deal. But on that note, like, there's not a lot of cards in the discard family that benefit off of discard, right? And then you have the risk of getting rid of them anyway. Like, Morbius is a great example. Love the card. If you could play him early, Modok will be awesome. And heck, I might do that in Mystique. That might be a crazy combo to have two things, and you get this huge swing with a bunch of cards in your hand. I think Modok is going to be good. And looking at the other side, maybe he's not super great for now, but down the line, if we get more discard options, like Wolverine, we just got Wolverine. If we get more like that, I think Modok is going to be a card that is going to be a staple in those discard decks. But Lockjaw discard is already so good. I want to see if he can fit in there. But either way, it's going to be really fun to see the discard archetype get some love. And Modok brings a lot of power and a lot of discard. Is he, early guesstimations, is he an easy... If you're buying the previous season passes, is he an easy decision?
Yeah, I mean, if you've been buying the season passes, then you probably continue buying the season passes. However, if you're on the fence and you only want to buy like legitimate meta relevant cards, then maybe you take a wait and see approach. Like I'm the kind of person, like I'll be honest, we create content for the game. I will be buying the season pass. But for people that they're kind of on the fence, I think that it could be worth waiting.
Okay. Yeah, I think Modok, if you don't play discard, you don't have a really big... The problem is the season pass, if you're getting it anyway, the value outside of the card is always good, so throwing Modok in the arsenal is never bad, I guess. But really, it is discard heavy, and if you hate... I know people who hate discard. They hate it, and if you do, maybe hold off, Maybe it's just not worth it, and you might as well get the other season passes coming out. That's probably what I would recommend there. But Alex, the last card I want to talk about with Modok that I'm shocked that you didn't bring up. Shocked. Because you really tried to bring this card up really anytime you can. I think a lot of people know you as it. You are a Canadian, Alex, right? But your favorite gal in Marvel Snap is America Chavez. And I think that this is a great card for Modok, being a 5-cost card. And then you have America Chavez, who's always there. She's Dependable on turn 6, and she can't show up early, and you know you're going to have that good power drop. This is probably one of the only cards that I think is more plug-and-play with him. And heck, she's already such a good card because she's one of the only, deck thinners in the entire game.
Yeah, and of course, naturally, if you have Dracula on the board and then you discard your entire hand, and then you guarantee a draw of Chavez, and Apocalypse is just standing there, you play the Chavez as a guaranteed hit for the Apocalypse with the Dracula as well, right? So yeah, it's like immense value. Would you be surprised to know that I think that America Chavez is an excellent card, one of the best cards in the game? Actually used to be a 6/10. So sad it got nerfed, but it was necessary, obviously.
Absolutely taken back and shocked. But this is what I want to see season passes be, Alex. On that note, Zabu Surfer, they were fun. I get it. And then the pool 5 system's so messed up. You don't want them in that, right? So I don't know what you do there. But I do want to say, as far as just it being archetype specific, feels good, right? This card is so... it doesn't hold a candle all the way up there. Dracula's his own beast, right? But like the entire discard focus archetype isn't quite there. And they did this. We had move. We had on reveal. And I like to see kind of little shifts in these archetypes rather than it's a catch 22 because I do like cards that work across all of them. What do you prefer?
I mean, I would say that having a variety is key, right? I mean, going a little bit of a back and forth. And while you were saying that, actually, I know I'm not answering your question fully, but can we also just say how cool it is that we have this synchronization with the theatrical releases as well? Like we had the Wakanda Forever, Black Panther. Now we have the Ant-Man movie. Like, I think they're on top of things. Like, let's give credit where it's due. Like, this is pretty good. Like, there's a lot of hype around for for Marvel and Marvel Snap. So I like the idea that they're doing that. So obviously, I think there's some influence from that standpoint that, hey, this movie's coming out. Let's make the season pass relevant. So I think that's a factor. But I do like the idea, to answer your question more directly, I do like the idea of having, archetypes get specific love. Like, I'm sure we're going to see another Move one because Move's kind of in a rough spot, even though I believe the development team has said on Twitter that, like, they think Move's better than people give it credit for. But we're going to probably see another Move card down the line, and maybe we're going to see a Zoo card come out at some point. And so all these archetypes can get a little bit of love. And, but at the same time, as much as we hate Zabu and Silver Surfer, it's kind of cool having season pass cards that are like have this universal appeal that they do.
And they shook up Marvel Snap. There's no doubt about that. They absolutely changed everything, and it would still be Bayro. It would still be Death Wave, and I'm so glad we've moved on from that. Although with the leader nerf, we'll talk about on your side. Could it return? Guys, the Rise of Discard is imminent. It's coming. You're going to see a lot of it, and especially the first week. And then I think we're going to find other ways to play Modok, so look out for that. Guys, I think Battle Mode, Alex, is I still stand by the best thing to happen to Marvel Snap. My Discord, filled with people battling all night. I've battled people. I'm sure you're doing the same with your community. I could not be more thrilled to see where Battle Mode takes it. I've got some big tournament plans and some huge announcements that will come after this video. But Alex, man, just final thoughts on Battle Mode and the last update before we end today's episode.
I mean, it's an incredible update. And if it does anything, it goes to show you just how bright the future of Marvel Snap is. You have an incredible new feature that really lays the groundwork for a competitive scene for years to come. And I couldn't be more excited.
I do. I think it's got a good future in the competitive world, especially, we'll have to see kind of where it escalates to. But the fact that they took their time gives me confidence with the other things we're waiting for, whether that be full screen UI. They could release it like that, but they're going to do something special and make sure it feels good and feels Marvel Snap. And I think that's what they did with Battle Mode. So guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Snapchat. Alex and me, we've been grinding content through the night because it's just a huge update for creators here. And guys, those are going to be the best decks you can use and the cards you should use in Battle Mode. Hopefully you enjoyed it, Alex. Thanks for joining again, and catch all of the other subjects over on Alex's channel. Until the next one, guys, have a good one. Happy snapping.